Hello everybody. Today we are with Emma Arms. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. I really appreciate you coming on. So, just a little introduction. I met Emma a good few years ago now. So, with me studying cognitive hypnotherapy, you go on to study different kind of interventions, and Old Pain to Go was how we met. And I always said doing a bit of Old Pain to Go training and working with clients was one of my most rewarding jobs when I could help clients out of physical pain in sometimes maybe just one session. And when I done the training, I was like, nah, this can't work. I can't see how it can work. And when I actually did it, and I saw a few clients and it helped them, with knee pain, back pain, it was just like, wow, it's incredible. Um, but what I'd soon discovered is it perhaps wasn't my calling, and there's more talented people like yourself that do it full time. And yeah, I reckon that's where we should start off. Physical pain. What's that all about, and how is it possible we can get rid of it in one session? Sometimes.
Oh, the $1 million question. Start me with a nice easy one,
Yeah,
thanks.
exactly. Just to warm you up.
So physical pain is not what we used to think it was. So scientists used to believe that pain was coming from the area that you felt it. Therefore, the medical profession were all focused on, I've got a sore knee. Okay, let's look at your knee. Let's take an X-ray, prod it, poke it, cut it, stick needles in it, whatever.
Mm.
Um, and then what happened over time, and only recently over time, modern pain science and modern neuroscience has now found that actually pain originates from the brain rather than from the tissues. So whilst we feel it in the place that we're feeling it in, it's actually started off in the brain. So all the work that physically the medics are doing is actually not always going to fix that pain. Yes, for some things, of course,
Mm.
but in terms of chronic pain, persistent pain, pain that's longer than 3 months, up to, 40, 50 years, sometimes it's because they haven't dealt with the issue up here, rather they've just looked at the tissue stuff. And we
Yeah.
talk about they used to talk about something called the biomedical model, which is what the old days, if you like, where it's biological, it's medical, we're just looking at this physical side of things. But now they talk about the biopsychosocial model, which is much more holistic, and it's much more about looking at all the different aspects of the patient, not just I've got a sore knee, but actually looking into how they live their lives, what their family circumstances are like, what their history is like in terms of stress or trauma. And actually, they're finding that there is a link between traumatic events or stressful events, not necessarily even huge traumatic events
Yeah.
that happen in the past, that then get tied up, crazily tied up with a physical problem that then create this long-term pain feeling.
Yeah.
People don't quite understand that initially, and it's kind of hard to get your head around. But if we think about, for example, everyone I speak to seems to have heard of phantom limb syndrome.
Yeah.
Somebody's had an amputation, but they still feel the part of their body that's been amputated, so they'll complain that it's cold or it's itchy or it's sore. Now, how is that even possible if it's not even physically there? Because it's coming from a signal in your brain. And that is what we work with now. That's why I work solely online. I don't need to touch anyone. We're working on the brain. Where has this problem come from? Look back at the past. Is there something that's got stuck there? It sent a message. Deal with that. Then we can move on.
It's so fascinating. And, I love listening to you and a few others from Old Pain to Go. And, what was particularly, I almost become addicted to listening to was like the stories we would hear in our closed group about
Yeah.
success stories. And one of them, my own one, like I say, I'm no expert like you, but I helped a lady with knee pain, and she was in her 40s and she had quite severe knee pain. So I looked out for the story, and she fell over on stage when she was a kid performing, and it did hurt her knees quite badly. And, there was a few sniggers from her peers, and, you know, it was a traumatic event physically and
Mm.
probably mentally as well.
Mm.
So I sort of said, you're not going to get up dancing, you're not going to do any sort of tap dance or whatever it was anymore, are you? She's like, no, no, no. I said, well, do you need, to be reminded about that pain every single day? Because it's the same neural pathways, isn't it? So like an emotional trauma is almost the same as a physical trauma. So your subconscious, one of its goals is to protect you. So her body, and this is why I sort of explained it to her, was giving her these pain signals so she didn't experience trauma again, i.e., going on stage and hurting herself. So
Yeah.
she agreed, didn't need to dance anymore, and her pain went down from an 8 to a 1 in the same session, and she felt warmth and tingling sensation in her knees. And it's like, again, when I say it, and I'm a painter and decorator, and been doing that for 20 years, but some of the stories we used to I used to hear was incredible. And what was fascinating me with you is I know you specialize in Raynaud's, and do you want to just explain a little bit about some of your amazing clients and success stories?
Sure. So yeah, Raynaud's is something that I just came across a couple of years ago. I was on Facebook, and one of the local groups, there was a lady complaining of having these white cold fingers. So it's when basically it's a trapped circulation and people get white fingers or blue fingers. It can happen to their feet, it can happen to their nose, to their buttocks, any extremity basically. Some
Mm,
people suffer it quite mildly and don't really think anything of it, and some people quite severely. And it's one of those things when you go and look at it, excuse me, from Google point of view, no cure, no cure, no cure. Sometimes they get offered medication, but they're quite serious medications that people tend not to choose to take because of the side effects.
mm,
So I remember seeing this post on Facebook, and I suddenly thought, you know what, I think that the work that we do, helping people with pain, could could also work for Raynaud's. So I
mm,
asked for a few volunteers from the Facebook group to give it a try, because I had no idea if it was going to work, but I thought, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And I was absolutely amazed at the results. My first volunteer got a result immediately, like you say, in the first session, in front of my eyes. She could not believe it. I was blown away. And in those days, I would get people to like go and get their symptoms switched on. So I got her to go and like put her hands under the tap and bring the symptoms on so that we could see that the process was working,
mm.
which was amazing. But then as the years have gone on, I've realized that that's actually a bit cruel making people do that. So I don't do that anymore. Yeah, they go and test it later. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was incredible. But for that particular lady, you know, people think, oh, it's a physical, especially with something like that, and you can see it. Well, it's a physical problem. It's something to do with your circulation. It's all medical, blah, blah, blah. But actually, it wasn't. As it turned out, had an emotional link. There was a traumatic response. And yes, your body had a physical response, but it was actually ticked off, if you like, triggered by the brain, by the unconscious mind. And that meant that once we worked all that out and found all that out, we could switch off those signals, and there was no need. We talk about it being a message, these physical manifestations, whether it's pain, whether it's skin condition, whether it's Raynaud's, migraine, whatever it is, we talk about it being a message. As you said, the unconscious is trying to protect their person all the time. And these messages are a lot of the time, don't do this, or remember when you did that, be careful, kind of thing, like your client with the knee.
Yeah.
And this was the same idea. So all we had to do was address what the unconscious was trying to say, was trying to protect her from, deal with it, understand that it wasn't relevant any longer, and then it lets it go. It switches it off as easily as it switched it on.
It's so fascinating, isn't
Wow.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any, just for my benefit, probably, but any other kind of standout um, clients that stick in your mind where people would say, Emma, come on, seriously, you're joking me, but we know it's real and we know you've helped. Any others that
Yeah.
stand out for you?
Gosh, well, I was working with somebody very recently, a young girl, and to be honest, when she phoned me and I started speaking to her, I really, because of the things she spoke about, I thought, oh, I'm not really sure if this is, oh, I don't know. But the more I spoke to her, the more I was desperate to help her. And I thought, you know what, she's been through all the surgeons, she's been through all the medical profession. She's at the end of the road. She'd been discharged by her specialist who said, we can't do anything for you. You'll just have to live with it. This was a 20-year-old female who was bedbound virtually, curled up in her bed every single day, couldn't get out of her bed, and horrendous 8 out of 10 minimum pain every single day. Absolutely awful, and had been through the mill. But I really wanted to give her a chance. Now, I hate to work with people if I think I'm not going to be able to help them, and I'm the first to put my hands up and say, you know, this isn't my area, I'll send you to someone else, or perhaps this isn't right for you. But there was something, I don't know, there was just something in my little voice in my head saying, you could do this will be okay. And she was lovely, and we clicked straight away on the phone. So thank goodness I gave her a chance, because she got an incredible result within the first session, and she was crying, and at the end, in a good way, you know, because she'd been told, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. You're going to have to just live with this. And at 20 years old, to be told, you know, you've basically got no life, just incredible, incredible. And it just really moves you when you work, you know, with, I had another young girl. I don't really specialize in younger people, but there's, you know, become like buses, I think, groups of people. I had a 15-year-old who had terrible tics. And she had this sort of kind of jerking and things like this. And it got to the point where she wasn't going to school. She was really struggling, you know, again, being through the medical side of things, nobody could help her. Nobody could make a difference. Didn't really know why this was happening, what have you. And again, I thought, I'm not really, it's a bit unusual, but come on, let's give it a shot. And again, an amazing result. I heard through somebody else that, you know, she's doing a driving test now. She's a bit older now, and, you know, got back to school and all these kind of things. And you just think, wow, this life-changing stuff, you know.
It's like in the group as well, people would, so I was always in, you know, I'm not just referring back to Old Pain to Go, because I know you're trained in other areas, but just, you know, from my experience with it. So people would ask that have trained in it, oh, can Old Pain to Go, can it help with X, Y, Z? And, you know, it's limitless, isn't it? It's the principle behind it, in terms of, like I say, our unconscious, looking at it's kind of protecting us. So even the most obscure problems, there would be a reason why it's manifesting perhaps as pain. And even I got to a stage when I was seeing clients, I would use Old Pain to Go for pretty much all the time, because I knew how powerful it was and how quickly it helped people. And it covers all areas. I mean, even, I'm not saying you use it specifically for it, but before we press record, you were like, well, even for smoking and stuff, you know, it can help. It's limitless, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with the mind. Okay, and we all have a mind, we all have an unconscious mind, it's part of us. And actually, when we understand how that mind works and what it's trying to do for us, then we can help with any kind of problem. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It's all about the mind. And actually, some of the stuff that we talk about is really straightforward and really logical and obvious. And when I tell clients stuff and they go, oh yeah, I never thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. It's just because we've been, you know, we live our lives in a certain way, and we've been used to doing things in a certain way, and I think we've kind of lost sight of trusting ourselves, listening to our own body, because we're relying on someone else to take responsibility, or someone else to fix it, not realizing that actually a lot of the work that we do is self, you know, we're just guiding them, but they are actually doing the work themselves, the client. And actually it's, you know, it's inside. We have to, but that's the key, isn't it? As we know, that the person that you're working with has to absolutely be 100% up for it, want to do it. You know, you mentioned smoking there. I had a lady phone me the other day and say, I want to buy my boyfriend a smoking package for his birthday. And I said to her, no,
Yeah.
no, we can't do that. Because she said, well, I think he really wants to give up. I'm not sure if he's quite there yet. And he's also vaping and blah, blah, blah. And I had to say to her, it's not going to work because they have to want to change. There's no point in, dragging somebody kicking and screaming, because we're all in charge of ourselves at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
if somebody I work with sits there and just goes, no, 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 a lot of rubbish, not interested, not, guess what? It's not going to work because they don't want to change. And that's the thing, they're in control.
Yeah.
It's up to them to choose, yes, let's do this, or no, let's not do this.
It's kind of like it's a delicate subject, but some people that are in chronic pain and perhaps they get disability money or whatever it is, and we don't have to go down that particular road, but they are in a roundabout way getting rewarded for being unwell in terms of they're paying, they're getting kind of money. And if they were to be very well in themselves and that money to stop, and then they'd have to look to make up that money somewhere else. Not saying they don't work, but do you know what I mean? There's secondary gains, isn't there, as well? So there's all a combination of stuff. Even like what I found really helpful was just explaining in simple terms how your brain works. So, it's a protective mechanism to keep us alive. And even like, say, a dog phobia, because I know you help with phobias as well. You got a dog phobia as an adult. It makes sense, doesn't it? If a dog bit you when you were 6, you've got a program in your mind that when you see a dog, when you hear one barking or one approaches you, your fight or flight's going to kick in. You want to get away. And it doesn't matter if you're 40 years old, and you consciously know that that dog won't, a little chihuahua won't bite you, or there won't be any problems. But
Yeah.
because of the subconscious or unconscious program which is running, you automatically go in that fight or flight mode. And that's the point, isn't it? It's about consciously changing your unconscious programs. And that's why as adults, we sometimes find it difficult to work out, why do I behave that way in certain situations? And it's literally explained in simple terms. It's a program running, which is outdated, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. You're 100% right. People are, when you were children, programs are installed within us without us even realizing it. And then as adults, we continue to have these programs installed, but we also install them ourselves. Like we learn to read and to write and to ride a bike and to drive a car, excuse me, whatever it might be. But actually, some of those programs, I call them like little bookmarks.
Yeah.
And it's just a way of the unconscious remembering, that was dangerous. I need to remember about that. I need to warn you about that. Excuse me.
It's okay.
And yeah, and then it just keeps repeating itself. Sorry, Gary.
That's okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. And then, so that incident of a dog, it might be, yes, you're afraid of dogs, but then depending what environment you were in, your senses pick up that kind of environment as well. So then certain environments may trigger your kind of anxiety. So say you were, I'm just trying to give a situation. Maybe it happened on holiday on a beach or something, and then you've took on a snapshot at that particular moment. You're like, right, your body's not going to get you in danger again. Keep away from dogs. Keep away from. It might even attach it to a beach. It sounds ridiculous, but that's how your brain kind of works. It believes it's doing a good job, and it, in fact, isn't.
Absolutely. I have a lot of clients, especially with phobias, that it turns around that actually it's something to do with their parents and the thing that their parents were frightened of. But
Yeah.
because as children, we model that behavior and we learn that behavior. When you, as a young person, look at your parent, and as your parent or your caregiver is scared of something, then your brain automatically says, hang on a minute, I need to remember that that's important and I need to be scared of it. A guy I worked with a couple of years ago had a horrendous needle phobia, and he was going for his COVID vaccination. So he came to me to get rid of that. And it turned out that his dad actually had a horrendous phobia of hospitals in general, that this then had come on to this guy who was in his 40s.
Yeah.
And brilliantly, after our sessions, he not only got his COVID vaccines, but he went and got a huge tattoo on his arm, which I just thought was crazy. It's gone from one extreme to the other. And he sent me a picture of the tattoo. And then he messaged me and said, here's a picture of me up the top of a scaffolding. He was helping some mates doing some DIY or whatever, or doing a job. And he said, you sorted my fear of heights out. I didn't even know he had a fear of heights, but the brain had obviously put all these things together, and the work that we did, the explanations that we sorted out and what have you, just dealt with that as well.
I'll tell you what, that reminds me, it happened to me. I was on a job and they took out all the stairways. So there was some steps up. You had to get some steps up to the next level. And one of the carpenters, he was limping around and he said, oh, a few years ago, I fell off some scaffold and, really damaged himself. And I think he almost died. And, he was in the right state. He said, ever since, I don't like going up ladders. So I said, oh, that makes sense, doesn't it? When it happened, your unconscious explained what we were saying. It's going to say, keep away from ladders. Last time you went up one, you almost died.
Yeah.
And I said, you still need that program now. You're only going up, 10 foot or whatever. It's just a small rung, a few rungs you've got to go up. And he said, no, I don't suppose I need to be fearful of it. And the next day he said, Gary, what have you done? And it was just like a conversation to say you didn't need to be running that whole program. And it's so fascinating.
It is. It's amazing how actually, that lays within us, but we don't realize it. And you need somebody else to bring that out of you, to show you. And the amount of people, even when I'm working with people as a client, because we all need help now and again, don't we? Say, oh my God, that was staring me right in the face, or who knew that was about? That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So if we can, I don't want to take too much of your time, Emma, but if we look at painters, so, I've had a bad wrist, you get bad shoulders, all the forward movement, you get bad backs, bad knees, it's wear and tear, isn't it? And I'm just trying to bring it full circle of how potentially you could help painters. So from the offset, all this is explained when you work with people. So you only help people that have been diagnosed with X, Y, Z, and the doctors basically said, look, you're going to have to manage this pain for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean? That's you need to be medically checked out first. But how could you help someone, say just lower back pain? They've had it checked out. It's a it's a slip disc or it's wear and tear. Just that kind of example. How could you help a painter kind of be in less pain?
Sure. Well, that's a great example, actually, because I myself had a slip disc. So I was a paramedic for 17 years, injured my back, and got medically retired, and did not get rid of my back pain until I found old pain to go, and I was worked on, and that's how I got into this. But the thing is that with that kind of injury, even if you've had a physical injury, there's a period of time where the healing physically is done, usually 3 months, 3 to 6 months, depending on the issue. But then after that, when we continue to feel this pain, this persistent pain, or even this achy thing that a lot of the time we put down to, oh, well, it's my age, or it's the kind of job I do, or, we try and explain it away left, right, and centre. And often the medical profession will also try and explain it away because they don't know any different, But actually what you can find is, even with arthritis and things, it boils down to the same thing. If this pain is a message to tell you something, then do you need that message any longer? Now, if you know you've got a diagnosis, if you know you've got a slip disc, but it's been dealt with, like I'd had operations, didn't make any difference, or it's just dormant, but maybe you have to be careful. Well, maybe you need a little bit of a low level of pain now and again to make sure that you don't hurt yourself further, or that you don't overdo it, kind of thing. And in that way, that's a safety program, and that's a good thing. But if it's preventing you from actually living your life, or preventing you from doing the things that you want to do within reason, because we don't want to go too far the other way, then it can be quite as straightforward as understanding that they don't need that message anymore, that that pain message, that thing that's telling them something, depending on what that message is, like don't go up the ladder, you're going to die. That's exactly what our unconscious does. It's frightened. Don't get on that horse, you're going to die, because every time you get on it you fall off and you hurt yourself. All these safety messages. Yeah, it can be just quite a straightforward process of getting them to understand, why is this happening? People can do it themselves a little bit. They can look back and, when did this all start? And if they look back and when did it all start, and they see what else was happening in their life at the time, nothing to do with their pain, nothing to do with their injury, but actually what else was going on at the time. And if they realize that actually that happened to be, somebody died, or we got divorced, or something upsetting happened, whatever it was, sometimes those things can get stuck together and continue on. And sometimes it's just about understanding that those things have got nothing to do with each other. There's maybe been a message that's mistaken, because our unconscious is also human and it makes mistakes. And it's just about understanding that don't need that pain message anymore about that thing that happened, years ago, because it's not relevant any longer.
So it could be, say there was, like you say, an event in your life, death or divorce or whatever it may be, and that particular week or couple of weeks you were on a specific job. So say it was like, what do most decorators hate? Say it was like rolling out a big ceiling or doing a hall stairs and landing, which are a bit taxing in terms of preparation. You could, in theory, revisit 2 years down the line a similar type hall stairs and landing and get similar type pains.
Yeah, well, I think that would be more like a secondary gain, wouldn't it? Because it'd be like saying, oh, I really hate doing this. I know you really don't want to do this. Here's an excuse not to have to do it. I'm going to give you that pain.
But that's possible, isn't it?
Yeah. Totally.
Isn't that crazy?
100%.
Or say you've just really hate painting. You've sort of grown to hate it for whatever reason. Most of mine love it still, but your body could, like you say, a secondary gain, be saying, look, yeah, you have got a bit of a dodgy back, but it's fine on holiday, it's fine on the weekends or whatever.
Yeah.
Come Monday morning, I'm going to give you that pain. Keep away from danger, going to work because you don't like it. It's not good for you. And there could be an element of, and then it could be a vicious circle, couldn't it, where you get in pain when you're working, and because of the pain, you hate doing decorating. So it might be a mixed up kind of message without going too complicated. Yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it? Interesting, where you could do some work and just really strip it all back and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and that's the key, is just getting to the bottom of it and finding out. And that can be hard to do on your own, because you don't see the things that other people, even if you're speaking to a mate about it, a mate would be like, oh, that's got to do with that. It's really obvious, but in your head, you can't see it like that. And sometimes it's, just like you say, stripping it back and seeing it for what it is, and actually taking a step back and assessing, how am I living my life? What's going on for me? I didn't know at the time, but in hindsight, which is a wonderful thing, of course, I was really struggling when I hurt my back. Now, 17 years of heavy lifting equipment and patience, it's obviously going to have a long-term effect on you. But actually, when it kind of went ping, if you like, was when I was on maternity leave. And at the time, I was trying to deal with the ambulance service to get shared working or part-time working to do childcare. Yeah. And they were having none of it in those days, very male orientated, not really interested in that kind of stuff. And that was causing me huge amounts of stress. And I look back at that now and think, actually, I wonder if partly the back pain thing, the fact that it didn't get better, and the fact that I had continued to have pain, and even when I tried to go back, it kicked off again. It got a bit better, I went back and it kicked off again. It was actually my brain saying to me, you can't do this anymore. You need to, this is not a good environment for you or your family. I'm going to give you a reason to get out of it.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Now, at the time, I was bereft. That was my career. That was my love. I never would have left. But in hindsight now, you sort of think, actually, yeah, makes sense,
Yeah. Honestly, it's so fascinating. I could talk for hours, Emma. I think essentially, it's fair to say you can help with pretty much anything. um, I mean, do you go as far to work? I mean, we've mentioned pain, smoking, and phobias, that kind of stuff. Do you go as far as to work with people with anxiety, or is it more on what we've just spoken about today?
It's more of the things we've spoken about. Before I did hypnotherapy as well, and I would work with anxiety and weight loss, other things like that. But
Yeah.
I find that there are people who specialize in
Yes.
things like those, where it's better to go to a specialist, somebody who's doing that and who's got all the extra tools
Yeah.
that sometimes those kind of things need. So when people approach me with stuff like that, I'll always refer them on, because I'm not the best person to work with that, I don't think. And there are, people that are more specialized in that. And I
Yeah.
think that's important, that you find someone that really knows their subject, that really knows what you're dealing with, what they're going to help you with. But also, you need to have a rapport with a client. They need to seem to like you, like the look of you, like the sound of you. And that's another, if somebody was looking for help, going and finding someone that they feel that they click with is really, really important.
Yeah, and that's why I love doing these chats, because I'm speaking for people who specialize in all sort of different areas. And like I said to you, just by our talking, I know people will love you anyway because you come across so brilliantly. But it's about looking at each specialized kind of area and then just giving the people a chance to listen in. And I believe just by listening in, it will help people. But yeah, certainly it's enough to go around in terms of phobias and smoking and pain. I think pretty much everybody has one of those problems.
Sadly, yeah, sadly, unfortunately, but at least now we know, we're getting the word out, right? That there is another answer than just the medical side of things, especially when you're being told, well, we can't do any more, just keep taking the painkillers that don't really work, or, well, we're done with you. People are lost, and they're not getting the help and the support that we need. And now, hopefully, the more that we can get the word out, then the more people can get their lives back.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Emma, I'm going to hit stop in a minute, but I will have a quick chat after if you don't mind hanging on.
Sure.
But I really, really appreciate your time. I'll obviously post up all your details and contact details. But it's been a real pleasure to speak to you.
Oh, thanks, Gary. You too.
All right, you take care.
Cheers.